Hello again, everybody, at Vintage Iron Range Dirt Track Racing. I am here today with John Schultz at his shop in Grand Rapids. John, nice to be here. How have you been doing?
Good.
Good night. Okay. John, how did you get interested in racing?
Well, I was fortunate to be a young man in the 60s, and of course going to Grand Rapids Speedway with my bicycle, and then when I got a car, I started racing when I was 16.
So you loved cars pretty much your whole life then,
Oh, yes.
when you were young?
Oh, yes.
Okay. When did you actually start driving a race car?
1966.
What was your first race car?
54 Chevrolet, four-door, six-cylinder.
Did you race that then in a six-cylinder division, or was that a hobby stock division?
It was a hobby stock six-cylinder division.
Okay. When did you quit racing?
I quit in like about 74 for a while, and then I came back in 77.
And then when did you quit for good?
In the 90s when Paul took over.
Paul being your son?
Yes.
Okay. So like many racers, you have tried to retire, but just somehow was drawn back into racing again.
Right. Unfortunately, the fishing was good on the Mississippi River by the government dam west of Grand Rapids on a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in my boat, and racers were headed to Bemidji, and got rid of the boat, went back racing.
You seen the guys going to Bemidji and just couldn't resist
Couldn't
the draw back to the racetrack, huh? Okay. What all classes of cars did you race?
I ran that hobby stock six cylinders. Then I ran the V8s that were around, and then I raced a modified.
Did you race supers too for a short period of time?
Yes, I did.
Because you had a car that you handed
Yes.
over to your son.
I had a super stock that I handed over to Paul.
And then they had a class here in Grand Rapids called Street Claimers.
Correct.
And you ran them just on and off.
I actually built 5 cars, and I also built a 6-cylinder car, or a 4-cylinder car when you guys were racing 4 cylinders. It was a Monza. Yeah.
Did you race that?
I did not. Mike Mullen ran that car.
So you owned a lot of your own cars that you raced. Actually, you owned probably all your cars.
Yes.
And then during your career, you've owned cars for various other people too.
Correct.
And various other
Correct.
divisions. Okay. When you raced, you got out of racing just before the factory chassis started coming on the scene around here. So all the cars you raced were cars that either someone built or you built.
Correct.
Okay. Now, on most of your cars, did you build your cars, or did you have someone else build them, or did you buy them, or?
In the early days, I built my own, and then when the street claimers, I had built my own. Otherwise, I purchased my modified, and I purchased my first super stock.
And that modified, that was still a home-built car?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And they were not aluminum bodied at that time. They were steel bodied.
Okay. When you first started racing, I seen a picture of your very first car, and the number was B4U.
Correct. That was a 54 Chevrolet.
Why were you B4U?
You know, you were young, 16 years old. You look at all the numbers. Back then, there were like 2x4s, and all kinds of goofy numbers, 626, 308.
Yeah, back then there was a lot of 3-digit numbers,
Right.
a lot of hyphens in the numbers. There were strange numbers.
Right.
But then you settled into 101 shortly after that as your number.
Yep.
And
My
you-
next year, then, when I was 17, I went to 101, and it was a green car, not knowing the history of green at that time yet.
So then you finished your career out as 101.
Correct.
Was there any particular reason why you picked 101?
No, not really. Not really.
Okay. I noticed a lot of your cars then were orange.
Correct. I have orange as my favorite color, and that's just kind of where I went with it. It was bright.
Did it have anything to do with orange and black being the colors for Grand Rapids?
You know, never dawned on me until later years that maybe that's where I got it from. I don't know.
So subliminally, maybe that's how you started to like them colors.
Right, my first passenger car was a '56 Chevrolet, and it was red and white when I purchased it, and I painted it orange.
Because orange and black are the colors of the Grand Rapids Indians.
Right.
Not the Grand Rapids Thunderhawks, the Grand Rapids Indians.
Well, they're still carrying the colors.
Yep.
Yes,
So you owned, back in the, I think it's late 80s, early 90s, you owned a bunch of what were called street claimers that raced in Grand Rapids.
yes,
They were like 3 or 4 Monte Carlo type of cars,
Right.
and they were all orange,
Right.
kind of team cars. What made you want to just be an owner of several of these cars and have other people drive?
I enjoyed building them, and at that time, it was to support Grand Rapids Speedway, to keep it going.
Okay. And then occasionally you would jump into one of those cars and
Correct.
race.
Yep.
What all tracks did you race at when you were in your racing days?
In my racing days, in the younger, it was Grand Rapids and Hibbing. Hibbing once in a while, when I could afford to go over there.
Okay. But did you travel to any other tracks at times?
Yeah, at later times, my modified, I ran in Princeton, went to Bemidji, Proctor.
So you traveled around upper Minnesota for
Correct.
the most part.
Correct.
Now, you used to go to Hibbing, but not all the time. But I understand your trips to Hibbing were a little sketchy.
Yeah, yeah. They were, I didn't race that much there. It took money to get there.
But you didn't have a fancy transporter or anything,
We had a chain.
a chain.
John Brokin and I used to chain our cars, pull them with a vehicle, another car, go all the way down 169, old 169, to Hibbing and race. And if the weather was lousy or we didn't feel like pulling them back, we used to park them behind a gas station in Hibbing where there's a pizza place there now, and come back and get them the next day. But if we decided to take them home, we'd get out of Hibbing, unhook the chain, and one rig would be in front and one in the back, and we'd drive our race cars home all the way through Nashwauk, Keewatin, Bovee, Coleraine. Just chug them along and get them home.
So you really wanted to race when you
Oh, yes.
when you pull a car 30 miles with a chain, you want to race.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes part 1 of our interview with Grand Rapids' John Schultz. Please stay tuned for part 2.